Welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to welcome back Megs. Over to you, Megs.
Good morning, Laws. Thank you for your service, and to everybody in the background. It's great to finally be back. I love the way you said that, Laws. Did you, or maybe I made that up? You know, you did say, finally, Mags is back. Just so you know, just in case anybody's thinking, I've been 1 week, one Saturday. So you haven't missed anything. If you are thinking that there's been an extended break, I've had a number of messages whilst I've been away about the recordings. Have I missed? And I'm like, no, just one, just the one. You're okay. You're not going to go back out again because you've missed one recording, you know. Well, hopefully not. If you've been following along with your sponsor, you're not going to go back out again, of course, because you're going to be doing the work that's required. But no, it's I jest about all of that. It really, truly is lovely to be finally back into a rhythm and routine again. Lord, it was so lovely. Not that anybody needs to know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The first message that I received when I landed back in this country was from Laws, saying, look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So that was just an amazing message to receive after a bumpy landing back into Dublin. I was like, oh yes, there is a God. And the beautiful message from beautiful Laws was a great comfort to know that here we are again, back into the rhythm and routine. So thank you for that. And of course, to anybody else that sent a message to, don't want to leave you out, don't be getting a resentment about it all. You know I love you all. But if I went through the list with everybody in it, then we wouldn't be doing much of a book study today. So yeah, here we are. Anyway, we are very beautifully going into step 4. And yeah, there's my little friend, Miriam. Yes, Miriam, I love you too. Just Miriam, sometimes she might not come on. I love you too. This is a bit random this morning. You can tell that I'm a little bit flummoxed. But anyway, we'll get into the flow here. We're moving into step 4. I have a few things just to, before we get into the words of step 4 in the big book, just to my own thing about this. You all know that I'm a big book enthusiast. Anybody that, you know, kind of spends time with me knows that I'm a big book enthusiast. When it comes to step 4, it's very safe to say that I am a huge advocate of this step. I mean, a huge advocate of this step. And the reason why I am so passionate about this step is because it is so incredibly important for the newcomer to understand what step 4 actually is and how we go about doing it. Step 4 in the short form, set out on page 59, and you'll see it on the scrolls in each of the rooms that you go to. It just simply says this: made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That's all it says in the short form. But step 4 actually begins where we're going to start today's book study, at the bottom of page 63, and runs right the way through to page 71. There are some very, very essential, clear-cut directions, 100% that are set out in such masterly detail. But what tends to happen in the rooms is that we only focus on step 4 that is set out in the short form on page 59. All we ever talk about is the fact that we made a certain and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We focus on that one line. And for the newcomer, we put the fear of God into them, and it does not help them understand exactly the process that they have to go through. And I say have to go through. We don't talk to them about what this process is about and why it is so incredibly important. In actual fact, what we tend to do is to put people off this step to the extent where they are so fearful of what this is about. For whatever reason, they hesitate, they procrastinate, they balk, and don't do it at all. My responsibility as a sponsor, when I'm with sponsees, like is my responsibility all the way through the big book, is to take the individual by the hand and place it in the hand of the God of their understanding, to keep on turning the pages and to keep letting the book do the work. I do not interfere in this process. I set out the directions. I help them understand through each of the words in this book what this is about and what they've got to do. It's as simple as that. Notice that word in the short form, it is searching. It is searching. We have to search deep down within us. But it's not a fearful moral inventory of ourselves. It's a fearless. My huge thing about this step is that genuinely, there is nothing to be afraid of. There is nothing to be afraid of with this step. The thing about it is that first word in the short form, made. We have to do it. We have to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So it's going to take work. Yes, this step does take work. But what you reap from the investment in that work is far beyond anything that you could ever expect. So as we're going into this fourth step, and I know I say it all the time, the importance of setting aside every single thing we think we know is really, really, truly important at this point in order to have a new experience with God. And the way that it's set out in the big book is so simple. It is so incredibly simple. And what we have the tendency to do is to complicate the back end out of it and share with people the disaster of it all, the emotion of it all, how difficult we found it, and we project all of our stuff onto the people that haven't even done it yet. And don't get me wrong, I hated this step. I hated it. I hated doing the work. I was the person that procrastinated and had to be pushed by my sponsor. But that's the role of my sponsor, to be able to keep on enabling me to keep on turning the pages. I didn't like doing it. The reality of it is I didn't like doing any of this stuff. But at the end of the day, I had to get it done. I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help. What we're going into here is an exceptionally prayerful exercise. And that prayerful exercise started when we say that third step prayer. We know that there's no amen at the end of the third step prayer. The amen comes at the end of the seventh step prayer. So we're in this very beautiful prayerful exercise where we're turning our will and our life over through steps 4, 5, 6, 7. That's where we're turning our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. We make the decision at 3, which we've known over the last number of weeks, but we actually turn it over by completing these steps that we're moving into. So don't be confused. Don't be worried. Don't be concerned. This next number of steps and all the way through to the end, and there is never an end. We're constantly living in our step 10, 11 and 12 for the rest of our lives anyway. But from this point on, we're not doing this by ourselves. You know, we've made this decision. We've asked God to take away our difficulties in that third step prayer. We've asked him and we've offered ourselves to him to build with us, to do with us as he would have us be, so that people can bear witness to his love, his power, his way of life, and that we may do his will always. That's the prayer that we've said before we're moving into this fourth step. So I suppose it's a little call to action, as my sponsor would say, and I used to hate that when he said that to me. You know, Mags, this is a call to action, and I would be like, really? Seriously? More action? Yeah, it is, I suppose, a call to action that, you know, be mindful, because I'm exceptionally mindful when I talk about step 4, that I have a responsibility to, you know, pass the message on in the way that it should be passed on. Now I just need to find, bear with me 1 second, my power cable. 1 second. Okay, that was not on purpose. All those little cheesy jokes. Lack of power, that was my dilemma. There we go. Charged up, plugged in, ready to go. So, we're going to launch. That's what we're going to do. Step 4. Next, we launch bottom of page 63. We've gone through all of the directions. We have, you know, completely and utterly abandoned ourselves to the God the God of our own understanding, and we're going to launch into step 4. So I've mentioned there that we're not doing this by ourselves. Absolutely and utterly, we are not doing this by ourselves. What we're about to do is launch out on a course of vigorous action. Okay. Now, when we say launch, I always think of a rocket at this point. You know, at the beginning of the program, it talks about the fact that, you know, we're rocketed to the 4th dimension of existence. I always think of a space shuttle. Very random. You know, sometimes that I use these little visual images. But when I read this line every time, next we launched, all I visualize is this rocket. And you know, you've seen it before yourselves, you know, and when there's a news program about, doesn't matter what the rocket is, you know, going into space, to go on some exploration, whether that be the planets or the stars or whatever it is. And those astronauts are in that rocket. You know, those astronauts have been trained within an inch of their life as to what they have to do when they go on this mission. You know, they're going on this specific assignment that they've been selected for very specific reasons, and they've gone out to do all of this training to prepare them for this mission. When they sit in that rocket, heading up into the stratosphere, they are so tightly strapped in. They are safe. They are protected. They've been given all of their safety measures and all of that. And as those booster jets go off, the flames start coming out, the atmosphere around that rocket starts to change. You can actually see the heat come off the actual shuttle. You know, there might be crowds of people standing around and they're cheering and they're screaming and they're, you know, encouraging people, encouraging the astronauts after all of the training that they've done. You know, they're going out on this mission and they want the mission to be successful. They've invested a lot of time, effort and energy into this mission up to this point, and they haven't even left the rocket station yet. Do you like that really technical term that I use there? Rocket station? I don't even know what it's called. I'm just making this up as I go along. So if there's any astronauts listening to this and I'm not using the right technical terms, give me a call, provide me with the technical terms. I don't really care. But go with me on this one, people. It's important. They haven't even left the rocket station yet. And they're, the atmosphere is changing, the energy is changing. But still, they're so tightly strapped in. They're safe, they're protected. They know what their mission is. They know what they've got to do. They know the steps they need to take. They are very methodical in how they go about doing this. And genuinely, the same type of thing applies to us launching into our step 4. We are strapped in. We are so safe and protected. We've made this decision. We're asking God for his help all the way through this really powerful exercise. We've been given a lot of instructions and information up to this point. We know what our mission is. At this point, we don't necessarily know what we've got to do, but we continue to follow the clear-cut directions, and we will know what we need to do. What tends to happen here is as people move into the step 4, the atmosphere starts to change. Their energy starts to change. They start to panic. They start to worry. They start to get concerned about all of the stuff that's going to be found out, and they're going to be concerned about what they're searching for. They become fearful that something's going to happen to them through this process. No, we're safe. We're protected. We're going out on a very safe mission that needs to be completed. It has to be completed. Like the astronauts have to go into space, find the information, find all of the stuff that they need for the research, find the facts, and come back to present it to whoever needs to hear it. And I know that this sounds like a really stupid example or comparison, but that's what we're doing here. We're going out on a mission. But what tends to happen is that our thinking starts to change. Our thinking. What my mind starts to tell me at this point around step 4 is, I don't want to do this. People are going to find out a lot about me. People are going to see how selfish, self-centered, self-seeking I am. Oh my God, I'm such a bad person. I can't go through this. Stop. You are not a bad person. What we're going into is an exploration. We're going to search out some really important information in a very fearless way that is going to rocket you to a different trajectory as to how you think about you, your life, and what has happened up to this point in your life. You're going to be taken on a different mission altogether where you're going to start to see things differently. You're going to be able to, having gone through this process, and it tells us in the instructions, see things from an entirely different angle. Like those astronauts going up into space, they will see planet Earth from an entirely different angle. And their thought processes about the planet start to change. That's exactly what happens with our step 4. So know that we're going on the mission. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. Vigorous action, 2 really important words. It takes action. If we do the work, it works. If we don't, it won't. This is where it gets real. If you do not do this work in step 4, it ain't going to work for you. Like my sponsor said to me, like, how do you like them apples? Because they're not going to be very nice for you. Vigorous. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful word. We're going to launch out on a course. That's a route. That's a direction, like a golf course. We follow the course. All the little holes that they put those little balls into, 1, 2, 3, right up to 18, or maybe you do a 9 course, doesn't really matter. but the course that you're on is very vigorous. And vigorous, a beautiful word, means strong. It means healthy. It means full of energy. We're launching out on this route, on this direction, with all of this action, and it's strong. It's very, very healthy what we're going to do here, and we are going to be full of energy. Just like the energy changes around that rocket when it's about to take off, we do this with energy. We do this with pace. We do not hang about in step 4 for 4.5 years completing this inventory. Seriously, people, seriously. This is my thing with this as well. You do not hang about in step 4 contemplating your navel. You do the work. You get into it. You move on. You take the action. You keep on turning the pages. You write it down. It's dead straightforward, really straightforward, but we complicate it. I think you're getting my drift with regards to all of this, you know. Do not sit in the stagnant pond. If you think another little visual, a beautiful little pond, gorgeous water lilies floating on the top of it, little frogs jumping in and out, all of the little tadpoles, you know, all of the little koi fish in there. There's light getting in. There's vibrancy. There is life. A beautiful pond with light and life and all of that. That's what you want to have. You do not want to be sitting in stagnant water with green algae covering the top of that water where no light and life can get in. If you sit in your step 4 for too long, you will be sitting in a stagnant pond of bitterness, guilt, shame, remorse. Your head will take over. Your thinking will take over. I'm a bad person. I can't do this. Look at all I've done. I can't do that. Shush. Get out of it. Take the action. Move on. And don't get me wrong. Like, I did that. I did for a period of time. I'll never forget. I'm sitting in this kitchen. When I got out of rehab, I started into the steps. I was doing my step 4. And let me tell you, my kitchen was the most beautifully arranged kitchen you could ever see in Ireland. Every drawer, every cupboard, the knives and forks were the right way round. The Tupperwares were stacked beautifully. The floors were like mirrors. The oven, oh my God, it was absolutely, again, like a mirror. The house was spotless. My wardrobes were tied within an inch of its life. There was more clothes sent to the charity shop than there were in my wardrobe. I procrastinated. I put this off. But then what happened? My sponsor called. My sponsor. How dare he interrupt me in the middle of all of the organisation? MAGS, how's that 4-column inventory going? Well, you know, I'm just doing some life admin that I hadn't touched for about 4 years, shredding letters that I hadn't opened for about 4 years during my drinking and using. And all my sponsor said to me, life admin, get the columns done. And he put the phone down. Because the only life admin that I needed to be doing at that point was my 4th step. Let me tell you, your mind and your thinking will start to take over. Other stuff will become important. This mission is one of the most important missions that you will ever go on in your life. And it is the most beautiful thing to get through this. The energy will shift. The energy will move. The light will come. Remember, you're in this powerful exercise. You're constantly praying. You've already asked God to take away your difficulties. This is already in process. You're not doing this by yourself. You are never alone. You never have been alone. But what this process has enabled you to do is to gain access to this power that is going to be with you through the entire thing. So as you launch out on this really strong, really healthy, full of energy, vigorous course of action, this is the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. A personal house cleaning. Okay, forget about the wardrobes. Forget about the immaculate kitchen and the oven. It's your personal house cleaning. It's the stuff within. Okay, it's not all of the stuff on the outside that you think that people think of you and all of that. You're going inside. You're turning in. Remember, top of page 59, we stood at a turning point. We're asking God for his protection and care. You're turning in. Now, of course, you're going to be looking at some of the stuff that has been happening externally, but you're going to start to see this from an entirely different angle. Page 64, the top line, you know, this personal house cleaning, so on point, the language that they use, so on point, laser precision, rocket position, the words that they chose for this step. You know, this personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. If this is your first time going through the 4th step, you'll have never have attempted anything like this, I'm sure. And there's a lot of people probably listening to this or on here that have never done it either. And that are sitting in the rooms, going to meetings, thinking that they've done the 4th step because they read it in the short form in the big book. Or they've heard somebody read it out, chapter 5, how it works, step 4, made a certain fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And they think that they've done it because they've talked about it and dumped their problems in the rooms. That's not a fearless and searching moral inventory of yourself. You'll know when you've done a fearless and thorough moral inventory of yourself. You'll never forget it. If you've done it the way that is set out in the big book, you'll never forget it. And in actual fact, what you'll want to do is more and more and more. But how we do that changes as we go through the rest of the steps. You know, when we get into this inventory, we do this inventory and we move right through to the end of the steps. We have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, you know. I'm not in a constant 4-column inventory all my life. No, that's not how it operates. I get into this 4, and how I do my inventories going forward changes. But we'll get to that point when we get to that point. I'm not going to confuse you. You know that we always grow where we're planted. So you may never have attempted this before, but it doesn't matter. Do not be put off by the fact that you've never attempted it. Your sponsor is going to give you exactly what you need to do it in the way that it should be done. It goes on to say that though our decision was a vital and crucial step. Well, what decision are they talking about there? Though our 3rd step decision was a vital and crucial step. So our 3rd step decision was vital, life-giving. That's what vital means in the book. Though our 3rd step decision was a life-giving and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So there's so much information in those couple of lines. You've made your 3rd step prayer. You've taken your 3rd step prayer. You've said your 3rd step prayer. From the bottom of your heart, you've asked for God's help to build with you, to do with you as he wishes. You've asked him to take away your difficulties. But that prayer has been said, but it's going to have little permanent effect unless it's followed by this strenuous effort to do your step 4. You can't live on the prayer of step 3 without doing the rest of the work. If you're sitting here thinking, oh yeah, I've set the 3rd step prayer and I've asked him to take away my difficulties and now I'm just going to sit in the little kitchen and wait for it to happen. No, that's not what happens. It's vigorous action. It's a course. It has to be followed by this strenuous effort. Strenuous means work. You know, it's like that says in the foreword to the 2nd edition, in relation to my own permanent recovery, strenuous work, one alcoholic with another. It takes effort. I give this away to other sponsees so that they can get the energy to give it away to their sponsees once they've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, you know. All of this takes work, a strenuous effort. And listen to that word, face. To face. and to be rid of. There's nothing that you're going to hold on to here. And like this is the first time that people have done a personal house cleaning that you've never attempted before. This will potentially be the first time that you've looked at yourself and faced who you are. Looked at yourself in the mirror and seen a reflection of yourself, whatever way you want to visualize that. This, in my experience, my bitter experience, having gone through this process and having gone through it a number of times, this was the first time that I had actually sat down and faced who I was, with a willingness and an honesty and an open-mindedness that I had never been able to muster before of myself. I had to have God's help. This is what this was about. I had to face and be rid of the things in ourselves. It's the things inside me. It's not about the people on the outside. At this point in my program, when I first went into this, I thought it was everybody in the world outside that was my problem. My teachers, the bullies at school, my colleagues at work, my friends who were no longer friends, the person at the bus stop smoking the cigarette who used to hack me off every single time. You know, how rude they were to be smoking a cigarette beside me, ever so healthy addict, you know, who was hanging out of their backside every morning because of drink and drugs. But there I had a problem with the person having a cigarette at the bus stop. How unhealthy. Really? It was never about the person standing at the bus stop. It was all of the stuff inside me. Like, that's how warped my mind was, you know? I had to face these things, which had been blocking me, the blocks within me. So important to start to consider this. We're going to be searching. Where are we going to be searching? Inside myself. So set aside every single thing you think you know as we're going into this. Can't emphasize it enough. The things that have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom. Our using was but a symptom. A symptom of what? The symptom of the blocks inside me. Our drinking was but a symptom of what was really going on. My drinking was but a symptom of the existence of something else inside me. You know, it tells us on page 19, the elimination of our drinking was but the beginning. So take away the symptom. Take away the drinking. What have we got? Take away the using. What have we got? You hear it a lot. You know, take away the drinking. What have you got? You've got my thinking. It's all about my thinking. The blocks inside me are all about my thinking, about everything that I believe is being done to me in this world. There's nothing being done to me in this world. It's all inside me. Now, over the next couple of weeks, whilst we're going through this process, there might be a couple of things that, I don't know, may cause you a little bit of confusion, may cause you a little bit of discomfort. Because what starts to happen here also is that, without getting too technical into it, my ego doesn't want me to move towards the light. My false self doesn't want me to move towards the light. My false self doesn't want to see the truth. My head doesn't want me to see the truth. My head wants to keep me in this thinking that has been my way all my life. My ego, my thinking, my head, whatever way you want to talk about it, doesn't want me to move through this. It wants to create more and more and more blocks to keep me in the stagnant pond. It doesn't want me to move with pace through this. It doesn't want me to be strong. It doesn't want me to be healthy. It doesn't want me to be full of energy. It doesn't want me to take the energy, to take the action. It wants me to stay put. It doesn't want me to hand my will and my life over to the care of something else because it believes that it can help me. My thinking, my ego, whatever you want to call it, my head starts to get noisy. It starts to get loud. The voice that is causing me the confusion gets louder. It gets more vigorous. It gets more, it doesn't get vigorous in the strong and healthy type, but it gets just more attacking. It gets more, it just fires negativity at me. You don't want to be doing this. You don't want to go there. You're such a bad person. You've got to set aside all of that, all of those negative thoughts that come in to have a new experience with God. Your head, your thinking will want you trapped. It won't want you going through this process. That's why it's so incredibly important that we're always remembering that we're remaining in this prayerful exercise to get us out the other side. My drinking was but a symptom. So we had to get down to the causes and the conditions. I use this example all the time. My mum had a form of cancer, and what she found in the first instance was a symptom. She found a lump. That was a symptom. She went to the doctors. They had to get down to the causes and the conditions. But in order to get down to the causes and the conditions, they had to remove the symptom. They had to remove the lump. Once they removed that, they could get into the causes and the condition. They could get into the extent to which the cancer had moved around her body. They could remove the things. They could remove a lot of that, as well as the lump that which was the first symptom. They could remove it from elsewhere to get down to the causes and the conditions. And getting down to the causes and the conditions, they were able then to prescribe the amount of chemotherapy and radiotherapy that would enable her to be free of this cancer. It's an extreme example, but the same thing happens here in our step 4. We remove the symptom, which is our drinking and our drugging. We get down to the causes and the condition. And we are prescribed the right course that will remove the causes and the conditions of our ill health, bodily, mentally, spiritually. For the first time in our lives, we're going to take the treatment. Realistically, this spiritual energy, the spiritual solution that will enable us to be so free from the bondage of ourselves, because that's what we're trapped in. That's what's taking us down. That's what's consuming our thinking. That's what's consuming every waking hour. And if we're getting any sleep, it's consuming everything else. We've got to get rid of the blocks inside us. My mother fought to the bitter end to live. She wanted to live. She took every single piece of treatment that was required to give her more time. And I know there's so many people on here that will have experienced that in their own lives or in other relatives' lives. Your dearest friends. So why wouldn't we fight? Why wouldn't, it's not even a fight. It's not even a fight. The fight's done. Why wouldn't we take the treatment? Why wouldn't we take the course of action that is so freely given to us in order for us to be free of the causes and the conditions, the blocks that are within inside us, to live a life where we are no longer trapped in the bondage of ourselves? All of this stuff that is racing through our heads, consuming our thinking, projecting onto the world. All of our thoughts, all of our emotions, all of that. Projection, 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 projection. It's horrible. Horrible. Why wouldn't we want to be free of that? Ask yourself that question. I don't know what the answer is for you. But if you think that you can hold on to this stuff, give your head a shake. You can't. It's serving you no purpose. So what have we got to do to be able to face it and be rid of the stuff inside us? We therefore have to start upon a personal inventory. I'm not taking your inventory. Your sponsor's not taking your inventory. You're doing your own personal inventory. This was step 4. All it is a personal inventory. And it goes on to give a beautiful example of what that actually is. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. You know, I worked in retail for many, many, many years, twice a year, once in February, once in September. We had to do a stock take. Basically, a stock take is an inventory. We had to take an inventory where we had to very diligently count everything on the shelf. We had to count it from left to right. We had to count from the front to the back. We had to start at the top shelf and work to the bottom shelf. There was a very precise way in which we had to do this inventory. We had to write it on little documents. We had to use a pencil. We weren't allowed to use a pen. I had to do the first count. There was a second count done by another one of my colleagues. And then a manager would come along, how dare they, and verify it all and sign it off. You know, the same approach is taking place here within your own personal inventory. And if you don't do this personal inventory, you're going to be broke. So taking a commercial inventory, here's that word again, we're fact finding and fact facing. We're going to find out the facts. We're going to face them. And it's a process that we're going to go through. It's a process. We're going to go from A to B to C to D to E to F. It's a process. And once you go through that little step-by-step process, it's going to be done. Dead straightforward. Nothing to be afraid of. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. In that inventory, I had to find out the truth about how many bottles of olive oil were on that particular shelf. I just had to face the fact, find it, count it, understand it in the sense of that's what it is. There's 25 bottles sitting there. Off we go. That's all you're doing. There's nothing more than that. You're just looking at the facts, facing those facts, looking at the stock in trade. But the thing about it is that one object that we have to do, one of the tasks, is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods. To get rid of them. There's that word again. To get rid of them promptly and without regret. If there's an olive oil on there that's out of date, I can't sell it. It's of no use to me. I've got to get rid of it. Without regretting that we've made a loss. Because isn't it better to get rid of it now than a customer buy it and get ill because they've used it? It's exactly the same with our inventory. Why would you want to keep all of the moldy stuff inside you, serving you no purpose? Get rid of it promptly and don't regret it. There's nothing to regret. Face the facts. Find the facts. All of the stuff that's serving you no purpose, get rid of them. End of story. move on. But what happens here is we go into this whole, oh my God, the self-pity, the remorse, the guilt. What are people going to think of me? Shush, get over yourself. Seriously, get over yourself. It's not serving you any purpose. It hasn't done up to this point. Why would you want to hold on to it? That's why you're so goddamn miserable. That's why I was so miserable, holding on to all of this stuff. Oh my God, when I was 5 years of age, this happened to me. Whatever. You're 50 now. Why are you still holding on to it? But we can't see it. We can't see it. We don't know how to count the bottles of olive oil. We don't know what to do about it. Where do we start? Where do I start? This is the reason why a personal house cleaning and a personal inventory is so important, because it tells you where to start. It tells you where to stop. It tells you how to move on. Couldn't be clearer. But we make a big deal out of it. Don't need to make a big deal out of it, because with the instructions that we're going to be given over the next number of weeks makes it so incredibly simple. I hasten to add, though, don't do this by yourself. You can't do this by yourself. You have to do this with a sponsor. You got to be guided by the sponsor. You think you can do your inventory from a recording like this? No, I would not suggest that that's the right thing to do. You have to do this with your sponsor and follow the directions. It goes on to say that if an owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about the values. This is where we got to get willing to be honest and have an open mind. That's what this is about. I can't continue to fool myself that the way that I'm living at this point in the program is serving me well. You're not even fooling yourself. You're fooling no one. All of the tools and techniques, all of the thinking that I've used up to this point of the process have not been working for me. So what are we going to do about that? We've got to face it. We've got to find the facts as to what is actually going on deep down within me, and I've got to get rid of it. End of story. So with that little business example, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We're going to do exactly the same thing with our lives. We are going to take stock honestly. Probably for the first time in your life, we're going to take stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. I love the fact that it talks about makeup. There's a point in We Agnostics where it talks about the tissues of our makeup. If you think about our muscles are made of tissue, layer and layer and layer of tissue, right? That make up those muscles. All we're going to do is, strip back the layers of tissue. Or even a nicer example is, when you get a gift. Somebody gives it to you in a beautiful box. And it might be the tiniest little gift within that box. But there's loads and loads and loads of tissue paper. Layer upon layer upon layer of tissue paper. All you're going to be doing in this inventory is stripping back layers. You're just going to open this box. That is yourself. And you're going to strip back the layers and layers and layers and layers of tissue paper. And what you're going to find inside is the most beautiful gift within you. You're going to find, honestly, the greatest gift that is within you. You're going to find your truest, innermost self. That gift awaits you. The most precious, precious gem that is within you. You're going to get rid of the blocks to the awareness of God's presence that is within you. And when you get rid of those blocks, when you rip back all of those tissues, keep on ripping it back, keep on ripping it back, all of that tissue has caused your failure. all of the stuff that you've piled up on top of the precious gem has caused your failure. When it uses the word makeup, you know, all of this stuff that you have made up about yourself, all of this stuff that you have made up about everybody else, all of this thinking that has become you, it's made up. You know, the thing that happened to you, the thing that happened to me when I was 13 years of age, doesn't matter what it is, I'm just using this as a random example. The thing that happened to me at 13 years of age is not what happened to me now that I'm 50. You know, what happened to me when I was 13 years of age happened then, but over the course of 37 years, I've added to that. I've embellished what happened when I was 13 to the extent that what happened when I was 13 absolutely and utterly is not the truth. It's become bigger. It's become a story. It's become a narrative that I've begun to use in my life as to why I am the way that I am. What happened to me at 13 was old. It's a fixed idea from way back when. But in actual fact, in this moment, it's not me. It's not what happened. I've added to, I've made stuff up about myself and about everybody in my life. As you know, because we joked about this, I put on makeup to cover something up, to make me feel better, to make me look better. What is that? And through this process of, starting to know myself better, starting to get the blocks removed and all of that, I don't have to wear this makeup all the time. I can be comfortable with myself as I am. I can love myself as I am. I wasn't able to do that before I went through this process. All of the stuff that I unearthed through this 4th step process was the layers of the tissue in my makeup that covered up the precious gift that was within me. Like it says on page 55, deep down within every single man, woman and child is the only place that the power may be found. In the last analysis, it is only there. So what we're doing is stripping back the tissues to the awareness of God's makeup, God within us. All of that stuff caused my failure. I've got to face it. I've got to find the facts. I've got to be rid of it. And we're being convinced that self, because we already know from page 62, that selfishness, self-centeredness, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of forms of self, we already know, being convinced, being moved by the evidence that self manifested in various ways. Manifestation presented, it just means to present, that self, we've now been moved by the evidence that it's ourselves, and self that's presented in various different ways was what had defeated us. And what we're going to do now through this 4th step process is to consider its common manifestations. How myself has manifested itself, how it has presented itself to the outside world. What we're going to look at is all of the things inside me that have manifested itself to the outside world, that has projected onto the outside world and everybody in it. And I think everybody else in the world who I've been projecting onto is the problem, when in actual fact, none of those people and none of the circumstances in this external world are the problem. It's my thinking. It's my perception of the world based on self that is the problem. And I'm going to leave it there. I've talked far too much, because next week we get into even more detail about what this is all about. But over the course of the next week, what we've got to be thinking about is seriously how we face this, how this is a matter of getting rid of, how this is a fact-finding mission, that we are going to find the gems within us that are going to bring us to the light, take us away from the darkness. All of that woo-woo talk, those are the words that are coming to my mind just now. I don't care whether you think it's woo-woo or not. We've got to get rid of this stuff. We've got to get to the light, and that's all you're going to do. I'll leave it at that.